He did not come with an army. He did not raise his voice. He stood between a mighty empire and a people who could not fight for themselves. He was not sent to destroy, but to speak what had already been decided.
Power had taught him one thing: never to yield. He sat above the cries of slaves, convinced that silence meant control. But a heart that refuses to listen does not remain untouched for long.
It did not begin with fire. It began with what sustained them. This was not chaos. It was a warning.
What was meant to stay hidden entered their homes. What they could once ignore now shared their space.
It came from the ground beneath their feet. There was no place to step away. What they ruled now refused to remain silent. Even the dust responded.
What sustained their wealth fell silent. Strength they depended on could no longer rise. Loss does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it leaves a void.
This time, it reached their flesh. No wall could shield them. No status could protect them. What they carried within themselves was no longer hidden.
The sky no longer remained distant. Fire.
The air itself became heavy. What once surrounded them now pressed in on every side. There was no clean space left, no clear breath to take.
What remained after the storm was taken next. The land that promised tomorrow was stripped bare. This was not loss of comfort, but loss of hope.
Darkness did not fall on the streets alone. It entered the halls of power. The throne could no longer see. When light is taken, authority loses its way.
The warning was given, not in anger but in mercy. What follows will not be sudden. It will be final.
Nothing had happened yet. No sound broke the night. Inside these walls, a choice had already been made. They did not wait for proof. They waited in trust.
The night was no longer silent. A cry rose from every corner of the city. What had been warned was now reality. No house was untouched by grief. Power stood alone. What had been defended at all costs could no longer be held. This was not surrender born of wisdom, but of exhaustion. The throne had reached its end.
What had been denied for generations was finally opened.
They did not march in triumph. They walked into the unknown. Behind them was everything they had known. Ahead of them, only a path they could not yet see.
When the silence settled, he understood the cost. What had been released was now beyond his reach. Regret hardened into resolve. The loss demanded a response.
Returned to motion. Steel and hooves struck the ground. What had once ruled the land now surged forward to reclaim control.
Anger,
found its voice. The command was given, and hesitation vanished. What had been released would now be taken back by force.
But fear has a way of returning. A sound, a shadow, and suddenly, the past was moving toward them.
The water did not part at once. It withdrew. What had always covered the way slowly released its hold. The impossible began to yield.
He did not move the sea. He obeyed, and the wind began to answer. What stood unmoved for generations started to respond.
The way did not open with noise, but with purpose. Waters that ruled this place drew back, gathering into walls that held their breath. And a path stood before them, waiting for a step.
What began with one became the way for many. Fear did not disappear, but obedience moved forward. And the path held them all.
The sea did not carry them. They stepped into it. Faith was not shouted. It was placed one step at a time.
What had opened for obedience now tested the heart of pursuit. They
The ground that held the faith.
At dawn, the pursuit reached its end. What had been held back was no longer restrained.
The waters returned to their place. What had chased with force was swallowed by silence.
They stood where fear could not follow. Behind them, the sea. Before them, a future not yet named. And they knew they were free.
I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation.
You led them with your steadfast love to the place you prepared. They did not run. They stood. And then they looked forward.